I generally don't do reviews, but I was curious about this product. They sent it to me. It's a guitar wireless transmitter for 99 bucks retail. And I'd used, of course, wireless, years in the past. Haven't done that for a long time because, of course, this is usually something that you'd want for live performance. Makes things a little easier without worrying about getting tangled up in the cord. But obviously, if you're just doing recording like I've been for a while here, cords work fine and you wouldn't need to use this. But I was curious about it, like I said, so I said yes, and they sent it to me. So let's check it out. Now, of course, this is a digital product, and the ones that I used to use years ago, like back in the 90s, the wireless transmitters would be, radio frequency. It would all be analog. And now that we've moved into the digital world, things are getting cheaper. I do remember that those things were pretty expensive back in the day. Now the digital versions obviously are getting cheaper, and that's why I was curious about this to see does it really work well, and how good is it? Well, the difference though, right away, as soon as you do digital transmission, you have a latency issue. Now they claim that the latency for this is less than 5 milliseconds. And just to give you a real world sense of what 5 milliseconds is, that is roughly the speed of sound traveling about 5 feet. So, if you're 5 feet away from your speakers, you already have a 5 millisecond delay, technically. And we experience that as pretty much instantaneous. So, if it's truly 5 or less, we're not going to notice. It's going to feel like as I play, it's going to feel instant. So that's one thing I want to check. Does it really sound instant to me? I know that I've played with delays before, latency, and I can hear a 20 millisecond latency. It's very noticeable, particularly if I play something faster. So we'll see, number one, what the latency is. The other thing that they say about this is that you have up to 100 feet and maybe less if there's things in the way. So I want to see, what kind of distance I can get out of this. I will, plug it in, and then I'm going to, walk around. I'll leave the studio, walk around the rest of the house, and then come back and see, did it crap out at some point, during this. And we'll go further and further and see how far the actual real world distance is before we start getting problems. Another thing about this is that it's 2.4 megahertz or gigahertz or whatever, 2.4. That's a common, digital transmission range frequency, and that's the range that, for example, my Wi-Fi uses. So I'm curious to see if there's interference with the Wi-Fi. And also another thing is that in the old days, the wireless transmitters did a lot of compression. The sound wasn't the same as plugging in with a cord. And I want to see, does this include that as well? So the first thing I'm going to do when we unpack it here and hook it up is I'm going to plug the guitar in direct. Just take an electric guitar, plug it right in, and record clean. No preamps or anything, just coming right into the board, just to play a little bit, and then through here, and then listen and see how close are the sounds. Is it a strong signal? Is it much weaker than dialing it in with a cord? Or is it the same? Is it compressed? All those sorts of things. Do we hear anything? So let's get to it. First step, I guess, we got to open it up and see what we're dealing with here. Let's take it out. Without breaking it, hopefully. Directions might be useful. We'll see. Looks like, kind of cool, little guitar-shaped thing here with a plug and a button and LEDs. And it looks like we got two of these, so one's going to be a transmitter and one's a receiver. Plug it into the guitar and then into the back of the board. And then I presume somehow we pair these up. Also, it looks like the batteries are inside these. I presume lithium batteries. I'll check that. And it looks like we charge them up here with this cord. So we need an adapter to get to the wall. And we've got type C's here to plug in these guys. Looks like this. Let's see. There we go. And usually the first step is probably to charge these guys up. That's what they generally say in the directions. So that's what I'm going to do, is charge these up, and then we'll come back and hook it up, see what happens. So I've got the guitar plugged in with a cord here, just direct, raw, no preamps, just totally clean. This is the first recording that I did with the cord. So, typical electric guitar, direct, dry. Sounds terrible, of course, but that's what it is. And I noticed right away, this is the version that I played with, through the wireless, and it's much hotter, obviously. Signal level is hugely amplified. It doesn't really sound compressed significantly. It's kind of hard to tell, though, when you have, wildly different levels like this. But the main thing is it's much hotter, which means as soon as you plug this into your amp or whatever, you can expect, it's like a boost pedal suddenly kicking on, and you're going to have a much hotter input. So, right there, you're going to need to know that, and you're going to need to back off your trims if you want it to be similar to what your normal level is. If you go into a distortion amp or something, you're going to be hitting that first gain stage and distorting it a lot more because it looks like your levels are up. Oh gosh, let's figure out how much. I got a VU meter up here. It's going to show, what are we? Around 10, maybe? Maybe hotter than that, like on the hottest chord hits, it was between 7 and 10. Now let's move forward. Let's see here. And let's go over here and run this one. That's +1. Even a +2. Okay, so it looks like we're about 8 dB hotter. Now we're going to see how much of a difference that really makes when we plug into an amp. So I've got it plugged into the ACEMIC 3, it's my digital modeling amp, with a cord. So this is kind of like my control, what I'm used to playing normally. It's a dual rectifier setting. Oh, it helps to have the volume knob up. Okay, so that's the cord. Now let's replace the cord with these guys. And one of these has a T on it. Right there is a T for transmitter. So that one goes on the guitar. The other one has an R receiver. It goes here. And now let's hear what that one sounds like. Whoops. And first of all, I notice that the gates are still holding. I have gates on the front end of this sound so that I don't get noise going all the time when I'm not playing. And I noticed that even though I know that it's transmitting a hotter signal hitting those gates, it's not hot enough to open them, except when I make noise. So maybe that boost isn't too bad. It is not too much to throw it. Let's check it out though. I'll listen and A/B it, and we'll see if we can hear much of a difference. Here's the playback just with that track that I recorded soloed, and here's the chorded version. And here is the wireless version. You know, it's not much of a difference, but I can tell, you know, that this is a little more saturated. There's a little more overdrive. The low end, you know, it's a little thicker, and the sustain on the chord, it's a little more pushed. So it is hitting that preamp a little bit harder, but like I said, it's not so hard that it's breaking through the gates, so it hasn't changed it all that much. Probably not really any more than jumping from one guitar to another. You know, if you know, all pickups have different levels. You know, some distortion class pickups will have higher outputs than others, and you might have that much of a difference between one guitar and another. So it's not a huge difference, but it is something to be aware of. Let's move on and look at range. So, first of all, here's our signal. And I'm going to leave the room and walk through the rest of the house. And the first test is going to be about 60 feet. And there will be a couple of walls in between, but they're interior walls. Okay, so we're going to see how it does with that. And we're on record. So I've taken a couple of walkabouts, went to the other end of the house, came back, listened. Also, I went outside. Now, the distance, first of all, down to the far end, is 60, maybe even 70 feet. And I noticed there was a little bit of dropout happening at the extreme end of that, but it was also through two walls. Now, the exterior walls on this house have stucco. So there's concrete on metal mesh. You know, it's pretty large metal mesh, but still, you know, not great for transmission. And then a wall, and then also an interior wall. So multiple walls. And it didn't do terribly. I expected it would actually do worse. But I could get a good 30, 40 feet for the most part, maybe 50. If I got much past that with those walls, well, you know, it stopped working. So I would think that probably without the walls intervening, well, we can probably get a good 50 feet. I'd be pretty happy with that. The thing is, if you're going to be using this for performance, you know, you don't need the measurement of what it can go up to. That's kind of irrelevant. You want to know what its minimum reliable distance is. And so I'm going to say it's probably more like 50 feet. And then you might get a little more out of that. But if you're on the plus 50 feet, you know, you might be getting noise and you might be getting some little dropouts. But if you're on a relatively small stage, you know, 50 feet is more than enough. So that's not a bad deal for a $99 unit. And it works pretty good, sounds pretty good. The only other thing that I would say is that it hangs here. It's got this hinge, you know, and it hangs here plugged into the guitar. If you are a very stationary player, you know, that's not a problem. It'll be fine. But if you move around or play with any sort of physical violence or expression, or you headbang or something, and you move a lot, it'll probably be okay, but I would personally tape it down, you know, run some tape over the back and connect it. Just me. Other than that, like I said, small stage, it's going to work fine.